I remember a time when I felt truly content with my life, earning a decent income and managing things well. That sense of stability was shattered one day when my credit card company called to alert me about a shocking $91,000 charge that I didn't recognize at all. Panic set in as I immediately halted the payment. At the same time, my husband Jason, who was traveling, kept calling me. Despite the chaos swirling around me, I took charge of the situation. At 31, I had stepped into a managerial role at my company, while Jason, my college sweetheart, was also 31 and we had been happily married for 2 years. While many of our friends chose to leave their jobs after getting married, I chose to stay in mine, earning more than Jason, which occasionally made me worry about our future, especially considering the instability of his income. We maintained our financial independence, managing our own money and sharing household expenses equally. This arrangement gave me the freedom to spend my leftover income as I pleased, a situation I usually found satisfying since we both worked and our life together felt harmonious. However, recently, while riding home on the train, I had a nagging feeling that I might have overspent a bit. As I glanced at a debit alert on my phone, I thought about checking for any unused subscriptions that might still be charging me. But that thought quickly faded as I struggled to remember the password to my credit card portal. Finding the motivation to sort this out was proving tough, especially since reaching the help center felt like an uphill battle. They were only available from 8 a.m. to 6 p.m. on weekdays, exactly when most working people are busy. The long wait times during lunch hours didn't help either. Still, I felt a small sense of reassurance knowing that if there were significant issues, like a charge over $40,000, the call center would reach out to me. This reliance on the system made me a bit complacent about contacting them myself. Meanwhile, online shopping became a brief escape from work-related stresses. When I opened a newly delivered package, a surge of excitement washed over me, but it quickly faded as I stepped into our living room. The sight that greeted me instantly shifted my mood from good to bad. Socks scattered on the floor, empty cans littering the table, and a random phone and sweater thrown carelessly on the couch. There was Jason, lounging in his sweatshirt, seemingly oblivious to the mess. His tendency to leave things in disarray often felt like he was deliberately contributing to the chaos at home. I aimed my phone at the couch and said, half joking, half exasperated, "Hey, socks and empty cans. That's what I come home to? It's not that hard to clean up a bit or even make dinner if you're home before me." He coolly replied, "If you get home early, why don't you clean the house? Don't be so mad about it." His words stung a bit. "I was tired too when I got home," I retorted, trying to keep my tone light but firm. "If you're not going to help clean, maybe you should consider whether you prefer working or doing chores." "Please just drop it," he said, not once but twice, signaling his annoyance without really understanding the weight of my words. I shot him a stern look, but he was too engrossed in his phone to notice my frustration. It felt unfair that I was shouldering the heavier load of chores on top of my work responsibilities. Was I being unreasonable for feeling this way? I wasn't sure what to think, but I feared that confronting him might only push Jason to become more indifferent about the upkeep of our home. Surprisingly, after our exchange, something changed. My husband started coming home late, even on days when I arrived early. It seemed he had decided to put in extra hours at work, perhaps as a way to address the imbalance in our responsibilities. On a particularly good day, I threw myself into my chores with more energy than usual. Jason had been really busy lately, which meant the housekeeping duties had mostly fallen on me. I hadn't given it much thought until I found myself cleaning his room, a place he hadn't tidied up in quite some time. As I entered, I was met with the familiar sight of empty bottles and cans strewn everywhere, even on the bed. Amid the clutter, something caught my eye: a package, elegantly wrapped in gift paper, lying quietly on the floor. Leaning in closer, I recognized the branding. It was from my favorite store. A flicker of excitement surged through me as I remembered my birthday was just around the corner. Could this be a surprise gift from Jason? Despite my curiosity, I decided to respect the surprise and left the package untouched. However, as my birthday arrived, the gift never materialized. As the day progressed, I casually asked Jason, "Do you know what today is?" "Oh right, it's your birthday," he replied nonchalantly. "Did you forget?" I pressed, hoping for a hint about the surprise I had seen earlier. "No, I remember," he said. "Aren't you happy with what I gave you last year? You know you're old enough not to need constant surprises." His words, so casually delivered, stung. He turned and went back to his room, leaving me puzzled and hurt. That mysterious box had sparked a glimmer of hope, but now it just filled me with unease. Then, just when I thought the day couldn't get any stranger, he announced, "I've got to go on a work trip abroad next week." This news was unexpected, a business trip to another country. I repeated, incredulous, "Since when does your job involve international travel? You've never even been on a business trip outside the state." He simply replied, "They just gave me this assignment." The whole situation felt increasingly strange. What was really going on? I had been feeling quite accomplished lately and believed I deserved some recognition. "You should trust me," my husband had said, but his words were hard to take seriously after discovering that mysterious gift-wrapped box in his room just before he left for his so-called business trip. After waving him off that early morning, my curiosity got the better of me. I searched under the bed where I had seen the box, but it was gone. Doubts began to gnaw at me. This wasn't just a regular business trip, was it? With that uneasy thought lingering, I dragged myself to work, but focusing was nearly impossible. Several times, my hands stopped moving as my mind replayed recent events over and over. "Hey, are you okay? You seem out of it today," a coworker inquired. "Oh yeah, I just didn't get enough sleep," I replied, trying to brush it off with a light-hearted excuse. Just then, my phone vibrated sharply, displaying a strange number on the screen. Normally, I would ignore such calls, but something inside me urged me to answer this time. "Excuse me, I need to take this," I said, stepping outside to talk. It was the credit card company's call center on the line. As I listened, a flurry of thoughts raced through my mind about my husband, our recent issues, and the necessity of sharing my password. Then the representative's words cut through my confusion. "This is from our debt protection service. It seems there has been a charge exceeding $40,000 on your account," the voice explained calmly. I was stunned, a mix of disbelief and concern washing over me. What on earth was going on? The conversation intensified when she dropped another bombshell. Yes, there was a charge for $91,000. "That's impossible. Wait a second." I gasped, my heart racing, and dashed back to my desk, rifling through my wallet only to discover that my credit card was missing. That was the card I had intended to bring with me. "Pardon me, can you please halt that transaction?" I asked urgently, the phone pressed tightly against my ear. "Yes, it's still pending, so we can stop it," the operator assured me. A wave of relief washed over me. "And please, can you handle the stolen card issue immediately?" "I don't have it with me," I added. "Yes, sir, I'll take care of it right away," she responded. Although the situation was partially resolved, the adrenaline continued to course through my veins. I hung up, my heart still pounding. "I'm sorry, but I'm not in the right state to work. I need to leave early. It seems my credit card was stolen and almost misused, and I have a lot to sort out," I explained to my boss, who understood and allowed me to leave. I caught the train quickly, and as I checked my phone, I saw countless missed calls from my husband. It felt as though he was trying to confess something. I rushed home, threw off my shoes, dropped my bag, and headed straight for my husband's office. His desk was cluttered, but what caught my eye was his search history: luxury cruises and travel plans for two. These were definitely not work-related, and I hadn't been invited to any such event. The so-called business trip was clearly a cover for something else. My heart sank as I grasped the implications. Scrolling through my old emails for any clues, I noticed a name that stood out. "Billy, what the heck is this?" I muttered, my anger rising. I wanted to slam the keyboard in frustration, but instead, I forced myself to look for concrete proof of whatever was happening. My phone kept ringing incessantly as I pieced everything together. "Oh my God, just stop," I groaned, overwhelmed by the betrayal and chaos unfolding before me. In the turmoil, I decided to use the password given by the call center to check my credit card transaction history. I logged into my account and began scrolling through the records, my disbelief growing with each entry. There it was, a transaction for an expensive handbag that caught my eye. The pieces suddenly clicked. Jason had used my credit card to indulge his mistress, Olivia, and even funded a so-called business trip abroad. The realization left me stunned. I had ignored several calls, but now, gathering all my courage, I finally answered the phone. "You finally picked up. I tried so many times," Jason said, his voice anxious. He immediately launched into a discussion about the credit card. "Who's the card for?" I asked pointedly. He hesitated before responding. You mean whose card? Well, it's easier to use a card than cash abroad, especially on work trips. Work trips? Or do you mean the luxury cruise and getaway with Olivia? I countered sharply. He tried to deflect. Why are you asking about the cruise? That was for business entertainment, a fun time. And was the designer bag for Olivia? Are you seriously trying to justify this by pretending you don't know what's going on? I pressed, my voice steady but filled with pain. My husband faltered, the weight of the confrontation sinking in. I understand, he repeated, desperation lacing his voice as he grasped for excuses. I know everything, I stated clearly. You tried to spend $91,000 on a luxury cruise and a vacation package for couples. You've been using my credit card to lavish Olivia with gifts. After a pause, he finally admitted, I'm sorry, I cheated. I'm sorry, but I can't come home until you reactivate the credit card. His plea hung in the air, absurd and almost pitiful. Do you really think an apology and admission are enough to make all of this go away? I asked, the weight of his betrayal pressing down on me. The conversation had shifted irrevocably from mundane marital grievances to a stark, painful reckoning. Feeling utterly betrayed, I told my husband, please spend the rest of your life at your resort, and hung up before he could respond. Almost immediately, my phone began buzzing nonstop. The incessant ringing drove me to the edge, prompting me to turn off the device to escape the noise. Soon after, an email notification popped up, informing me that my husband's return flight was scheduled for noon, 5 days later. I seized this opportunity to get my affairs in order, determined to resolve everything before he set foot back home. The next day, I began clearing out all his belongings from the house. By the second day, I had gathered the courage to tell my in-laws about everything that had happened, showing them the proof of his infidelity and financial misdeeds. They were shocked and deeply apologetic. By the end of our conversation, they agreed to support me in pursuing a divorce, promising to ensure I would receive $2 million in alimony and vowing to recover the funds my husband had frivolously spent. As the day of my husband's return approached, I received a call from my in-laws in the early evening, confirming they had safely filed the divorce papers. Surprisingly, my soon-to-be ex-husband had only taken a credit card with him, leaving our other finances untouched. However, the woman he was with had given him $91,000. Enraged by the unfolding events, she changed her flight, departing for Singapore before him without his knowledge. I couldn't help but wonder why she hadn't just taken his plane ticket and visa, leaving him stranded. While pondering this, I learned from my in-laws that when my ex-husband returned to Singapore, he found the house empty and his connection to me severed, with all his calls going straight to voicemail. In a desperate attempt to find refuge, he went to my in-laws' house, where he faced serious repercussions for his actions. After everything that had unfolded, the final step was filing the divorce papers. My ex-husband had dug himself deeper into trouble, and it didn't stop with our separation. The woman he had been seeing was now demanding he return the $91,000 she had given him. My in-laws told me that after he repaid her, they imposed strict conditions on him, almost as if he were back in high school. He was essentially under house arrest with a 15-hour curfew and his every move monitored by his own family, ensuring he paid off all the money he owed. Amidst all this, I took legal action myself, filing a $115,000 claim against the other woman involved in the affair. With help from my in-laws, I gathered the necessary information to pursue her financially. Once I did, it felt like the last piece of this painful puzzle was finally falling into place. It was a long and exhausting process, but when the claim went through, I felt a sense of closure. The legal matters had been resolved, and it was time for me to focus on moving forward. The next day at work, my colleagues and bosses welcomed me back with surprising warmth and concern. Many of them had heard about my situation, and their kindness was palpable. Are you okay? If you want to talk about anything, I'm here, one of my colleagues offered gently. It was comforting to know I wasn't alone. I replied with a grateful smile, thank you, I'm doing all right. Just trying to get back into the swing of things. Maybe we can grab a drink after work. I'd appreciate the company. It felt good to make plans and look forward to simple pleasures like a night out with friends. That evening, as we gathered at a local bar, the camaraderie was soothing. We shared stories and laughs, and although the shadow of recent events lingered, it was overshadowed by the immediate warmth of friendly faces. With each sip of my beer, The bitterness of the past few months began to dissolve slightly. I poured out my heart about the ordeal, and my colleagues listened empathetically. I'm just looking forward to putting all of this behind me, I confessed as the evening wound down. I think I'm ready to focus on the positives that the future holds. They raised their glasses in silent acknowledgement of my resilience. To new beginnings, they echoed. As I left the bar that night, a sense of closure mingled with newfound hope. The support of my work community had boosted my spirits, and I felt a deep appreciation for their presence in my life. It reminded me that even in the aftermath of betrayal and heartache, the kindness of others could light the way forward. Looking ahead, I felt a cautious optimism. The past couldn't be changed, but the future was still mine to shape. With the legal matters settled and my boundaries firmly redrawn, I was slowly rebuilding a sense of normalcy. The path ahead wouldn't be without its challenges, but I felt prepared to face them, bolstered by the support of friends and a renewed sense of self. Indeed, it seemed that better days were on the horizon.